it's just an amazing honor to be able to stand up here and share. And I am glad to have this opportunity, and I hope as we leave here from this hour, you walk away with a few nuggets of truth that might just help someone you love or continue to help you on your journey of sobriety. Working in the field of addiction, what happens is it's not the time where we can take the deep breath and the relax. In fact, something different happened, and those of you who've been in this field know what I'm talking about. We've come through the season where we've had all the relapses and all the overdose. And now we're dealing with that wake and that pain and that hurt. I get the emails of alumni and people in the community. I get the reports on Facebook, which is crazy. That's how we find out people die, but that's how we normally find out that people die today. And they come across me, and a few weeks ago, this young man, I think he was 19 or 20 years old, had died. And as I'm reflecting on his life and my brief interaction with him, God did something to me. He ministered to me in that moment. And as Bernard shared, I've been working in the addiction field. I was just talking to Gloria a few minutes ago, and I think I was working with her at like 98 or 99. So it's been a while that I've been in the addiction field in one form or another. And I have counseled literally and worked with literally thousands of individuals. And as I'm sitting there and reflecting on this one young man's life, God did something to me because I cannot remember names. I cannot remember names whatsoever, but as I'm sitting there, it was like I was watching a slideshow. And one face and name and story after another face and name and story was just flowing through my mind as I was laying there. Literally hundreds of faces of people who have died, that I have prayed with, that I have counseled, that I've spoken to their families, that I've tried to love on in the middle of addiction, needlessly. Something has to change. Something has to change. And I'm hopeful by doing events like this and trying to gather leaders in the community that we can be a part of that change. We can be a part of seeing something different happen than just another 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 50-year-old ODing and dying. The first thing I want us all to hear, and this might be the most important thing from anything I ramble about up here, is you are not alone. You are not alone. No matter how alone you might feel, it's a lie from the pit of hell, you are not alone. I believe we have a God who walks with us. Probably more importantly, we have a God who weeps with us. A God who's right there in the midst of this pain with us. The stats are staggering. Dr. B shared some of the stats. One of the interesting stats that I was reading as I prepared, that this is the first generation since the Vietnam era that has experienced higher death rates in early adulthood than the generation that preceded it. And all the studies looking at that can only associate that with the rate of deaths related to substance abuse and addiction. Some studies have reported that as of 2014, this is a little late, so it's gone up from there, because if you've been paying attention to the media, it keeps rising, that we've seen over 5 times the levels of overdoses since the late 90s and early 2000s. Reality is that more than 2/3 of American families, 2/3 of American families, when they're surveyed and they're asked, have you been intimately impacted by addiction or alcoholism? 2/3 say yes, absolutely. But we have this thought that somehow it's those people over there. 2/3 of Americans are those people? I have some friends here that I'm going to invite up. If they can just come here. I want you just to briefly share. We're going to start right here with Samantha. Can you just tell us what your life looked like from the outside before addiction took over?
Normal. What the common stereotype of normal is. I was your administrative assistant, I was sickly. I was very driven, though. I've refused to be normal all my life because I was just raised that way. And for me, before addiction took over, I can't remember it. Okay. Because there was always something that, whether it be coffee, whether it be, you know, sugar, something like that. I was very driven. So, I had to be first in sports.
So you were an administrative assistant. Where were you working?
I worked for Mount Carmel East Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. And then I was, this is probably one of the most life impacting. I was the assistant to my pastor at church. I was her right-hand person. I did everything, and I was on pain medication, and you know, I just had to be somebody. I was a people pleaser.
Awesome.
So I was everything to everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Betty, people looking at your life before you were in the thralls of addiction, what did it look like? What would they have seen?
Well, I grew up in Ireland, and women didn't drink, for one thing, but I came to America when I was 16 years old, and I guess you might say I attained the American dream. I got married, had 2 children, had my business. I was involved in church since I was in my mother's womb, and I was raised in the church. And something I learned very quickly was, as I started to drink, was that alcoholism doesn't play any favorites. Because I felt like I had the American dream, or so I thought. And by the grace of God, I still had it. But alcohol devoured me, just like it says in the Word. Satan is roaming around seeking whom he may devour. I love that word devour, because that's exactly what he does. He just came in and devoured me and sucked me down for a good 20, 25 years.
So Betty, from the outside, you would have been looked at like a housewife, a provider, a loving parent? So.
Absolutely. Yes, I didn't work at the beginning of my marriage, and I raised 2 children. I'm sure because of my drinking, I was divorced, and I ended up raising the children by myself. But it was no easy task working and raising 2 children. However, once like I said, I was brought up in the church, but I really never had a relationship with God. And when I came into recovery and did the 12-step recovery program, I developed that relationship. And today it's my all, it's my everything, because it is, I know that that's what attracts people to me. It's not me, it's the Christ within.
Awesome.
And then I have the opportunity to share my heart on alcoholism with them.
Awesome. Thank you, Betty. Pass it right over to Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn, drug addict alcoholic. For me, what it looked like and what it really was were 2 entirely different things. My addiction started very young, probably at age 16, and lasted about 35 years. And I was classic at manipulating other people to get exactly what I wanted, and it only prolonged my disease for many, many years. So what it's like now and what it's like then are 2 entirely different things. It literally brought me to my knees. I mean, I built up a big business only to see it crumble down to 0. I lost literally everything. I went from Park Avenue to Park Bench, and then some. And if it wasn't for God used my family, He used people in my family to keep me going. But then when it came time when I was brought to my knees, He strategically placed those people there to keep me afloat, or I would have been under the bridge. No doubt about that if I didn't have the people in my life. But fast forward 5 years later, everything that I've lost, I've gotten back and then some, and I'm able to give back to others, and it's only because of what Pastor said, the love of God, and then like Dr. D said, using us to give back to others in the community now. I will not be a statistic. I've gone through a lot. I lost a daughter 2 years ago, and that only made me stronger. It will not bring me to my knees. There's nothing that will bring me back to the drug addiction. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I love God, I love Christ, I love my family, and I will keep coming back.
Marty.
When I fell down and things got rough, whether it was, through my addiction or whether it was just through life in general, I employed these tattoo-like will thoughts of, well, Marty, get up, adapt and overcome, no excuses, just results. Nike, just do it, so on and so forth. That was my mindset. I was very motivated. I was successful at what I did in the mortgage business with Wells Fargo. And then, eventually, as my addiction went on, it ate at me. It was the guy with the mask on the outside. It was the guy dying inside, and he didn't even know it. I was numb to the experience, completely numb to it.
So Marty, when did your addiction start really to take over?
Oh, 4 years ago.
About 4 years.
I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. I didn't start drinking until I was actually graduated high school. And then an additional substance, cocaine, came into the picture about 4 years ago.
Thank you.